one.
I do think my intelligence is a big part of my sex appeal. I mean, for our many loving fans out there.
Forget it. We're starting over again. Let's go. It's starting in 5, 4.
Oh,
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Hoops HD. This is the weekly Hoops HD report. I'm your host here in the top center, Chad Sherwood, joined by David Griggs, unfortunately, John Teitel, Joby Fortson, and John Stalika down the row below. And this is the podcast where we go over all the news and notes and upcoming events in all of the major conferences, the Power 6 conferences, the other 4 multi-bid conferences. And I think that's everything we do during these shows. What else do we do?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we preview upcoming games.
Okay.
We reveal the bracket. Oh wait, that's not this show. This is the Hoops HD report.
Well, actually, that's a little bit of news. I'll start with that. We're going to be doing the first of our bracket rundown shows later this week, so keep an eye on the website, probably late Thursday or into Friday morning. But let's go ahead and start by pulling right up here on the screen the standings and start off with the ACC tonight because there's big news, Joby, out of the ACC and specifically out of a Notre Dame team that's been kind of mess so far this season to begin with, and now they got a big problem with Bonzie Colson.
Yeah, I think without Bonzie Colson, I mean, their chances are pretty much shot because they're not going to get a lot of leeway with the famous injury, injury bug, exception that it seems like that a lot of fans, not necessarily the committee, but fans buy into. Oh, well, our player was injured. Well, your player wasn't injured, and this was said earlier offline. Your player wasn't injured when you lost to Indiana and Ball State. So you are what you are now, which is not in the tournament. The shame is that means Notre Dame doesn't have the chance to go out and beat Duke, beat North Carolina, and make the necessary full resume case to get in. I think Notre Dame is toast, plain and simple. And it's a shame because Bonzie Colson was, I think, when we were going through pretty much almost a unanimous everybody's player of the year preseason on this panel. It's a big shame. Foot injuries are, for a basketball player, this is not a sport where wear and tear on a foot is good. They say 8 weeks. It might be best to just not press it if they think that they can. He's already played a third of the games, but maybe they can petition the NCAA and get some help and get another year for him.
Not if he's played a third. I was actually – how many games have they played?
They played about 12, I think.
Too many.
14 actually.
He can't – no, there's no medical. That's off the table, unfortunately.
Yeah, so he might be – his next game very well –
It's a sixth, by the way.
In the NBA.
Yeah. It's a sixth of the season, by the way, not a third.
Okay. Football's a third. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Teitel, you are our expert at guessing the committee, and I just pulled up Notre Dame's resume here on the screen. They do have the Wichita State win. They've got the LSU win. Not much more. But if this team kind of plays mediocre in the ACC, like 500, do they have a shot, especially if Colson maybe does come back by the time you reach the ACC tournament?
I think any team that plays 500 in the ACC has a shot. I fear that they're not going to go 500 because of him. You don't understand, he's obviously a walking double-double with 20 and 10 every night. On defense, he's averaging 2 steals and 2 blocks a game, which is why I think he's a better ACC Player of the Year candidate, or at least was, than even Marvin Bagley, who was off to his amazing start, because he does it on the offensive and defensive end. So in my recent bracket that I just posted, I had Notre Dame this weekend at 8 seed. I think they're going to plummet into bubble-licious category, and I think that it might be crashing down and they might blow it and miss the whole freaking tournament.
A little bit of a factoid here. Last year, Indiana was ranked third at one point and missed the tournament, and I believe missed the NIT. And I was trying to remember the last time a team that was ranked in the top 5 at some point had missed both tournaments. Does Notre Dame have it in them to make it back-to-back years where we had a team ranked in the top 5 at some point that missed the NIT?
From the Hoosier State.
Yeah. Good point.
Not a good state to be in. But and I think it's definitely possible. But let's go to a few of the other games of note that did happen in the ACC this week. And Stalika, the Kentucky Louisville game was. Are you with me here? That this is a game that seems like every year I look so much forward to this game, and then when I actually watch it, I just want to shoot myself because it's so painful to watch.
I mean, you would have probably watched it more for what would be going on off the court than what would have been going on the court this year, but it was enough to make me tune into some of the lesser bowl games that were on as opposed to this rivalry here.
It's typically a fugly game. Now, last year it was 3 minutes down to a last-second shot that could have tied it. The year before, or 3 points, excuse me. The year before, it was a 2-point game down to a last-second shot that could have won it. So we had back-to-back years where it came down to the final shot. But excluding that, it seems like it was a overly emotional, sloppy game with no flow where the whistle-happy just – here's a spoon so you can dig your eyeballs out. You'll thank me for it later. But this was exceptionally ugly, even by Louisville, Kentucky standards. I mean, what an uninspired effort by Louisville. I couldn't believe it, really.
Well, Joey, is this Louisville team an NCAA tournament team? Because I still don't think we know anything about it.
Right now, they're not. No,
Okay.
no, not at this point. But as John T. kind of hinted at, they have the capability of getting to 500 or above 500 in the conference to be able to get there. They're not far out of when you're looking at putting up seed lines and that sort of thing, you could put Louisville in right now on the 10, 11, 12 spot. I wouldn't, but it's not unfathomable. There's a lot left to be played. Louisville can play their way in, but they're going to have to play their way in. They've missed their opportunities out of conference for the most part.
I know that this is like armchair quarterback talk, but I mean, in watching that game, it wasn't just a lack of ability. Was anybody else taken by just a complete lack of effort and interest in what really is a highly emotional, high-stakes game most years with a heated rivalry that Louisville looked up and it just showed up and it looked like they were so disengaged. And it's like, if they can't get into this game, what games can they get up for? I was kind of surprised at just like the passiveness of Louisville in this game.
Titel?
All right, I just silenced them.
Yeah, I mean, when you lose 90-61, I certainly think that passivity can be attributed. I think it was also Kentucky had to bounce back after getting beat by UCLA, and they did it in a big way with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, 24 off the bench, the entire Cardinal team at 13, and it was just a poor shooting night for the Cardinals. When you only make 3 of 25 threes, you're not going to beat anybody, right?
Yeah.
Joe,
had Louisville closed the game on a 27-0 run, they would have lost. Just throwing that out there. Okay.
Joby, I pulled up the upcoming schedule here for the ACC, and your Hoos have a very interesting week coming up here at Virginia Tech, hosting North Carolina, hosting Syracuse. Real get thrown right into the fire there in the first week of ACC play.
No, the Virginia's resume is a solid one right now, but it is missing marquee wins. It is avoiding bad losses, but missing, besides Rhode Island. Rhode Island's the only win over a team that's probably in the field right now. That will change if Virginia can get wins in this week, whether specifically at Saturday at North Carolina in the nationally televised afternoon game for the ACC on ESPN. Then Syracuse is probably in the tournament too, so you get 2 opportunities at home to beat NCAA caliber teams. And then, so what does that leave you with? The tough loss that might be here is that Virginia Tech game. It is going to be a dog fight there because Virginia Tech is desperate. They haven't had the out-of-conference performance that they expected coming into this year. Plus, their schedule beyond the handful of reasonable games has been pathetic. A lot of 300-plus RPI teams. You're seeing a desperate team that Virginia Tech may pull out all the stops. We're going to see if the drive to the hoop, pray for a foul, throw it up game plan that Buzz will bring will work or not. It did last year.
Can I ask about a team?
Go ahead.
Clemson has cracked the rankings, and I believe what is the first time since Brad Brunell took over for Oliver Purnell. Is this finally the year if we're pulling up Clemson? And we saw last year the 8 games that they either lost in overtime or lost on the last possession of a game. Is this the year Clemson finally dances? And they look pretty good. The win against the 2 wins on the first tier there at Ohio State, that looking better and better. Real nice win against Florida. A real fugly game, another ugly out-of-conference rivalry game, but a nice win on paper, I guess. That South Carolina game.
It's funny that you mentioned Clemson because they're also going to be playing Boston College, which has also upset the apple cart a bit in the ACC. They both play at BC, and once that's through, Clemson will host Louisville. And then Boston College will also be playing Wake Forest afterwards. So both teams certainly with pivotal chances coming up.
Right. And from what you've seen of this team, you've watched them. Do they have it in them to finally make the tournament? And is the 20th yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, Tytel, you just did a bracket. Did you have Clemson in there? And I mean, this is a 12-1 team, probably the quietest 12-1 team in the nation.
Yeah, I think if you want quiet one-loss teams, I think Auburn's also on the list. But, yes, I had Clemson as a 7 seed. When you're beating Florida and South Carolina, obviously not the biggest year in the SEC. They're kind of middle tier, but still great, and Ohio State and NC State. I have them ahead of Notre Dame, and obviously with today's news, I think it's going to keep trending in that direction.
I agree with you. I'm liking this Clemson team, and now that we're into conference play, they're going to get a chance to make some noise and or completely collapse and fall right out of the picture.
I mean, they could lose 8 more games at the buzzer.
Let's head over to the Big East. And Salika, this is your conference where we just saw this tonight. Xavier held on against Butler. They had a big lead and they tried to blow it but didn't. Now off to a 3-0 start in conference and in sole possession of first place there.
Well, the fact that they had to survive against Butler wasn't the surprise. The fact that they fell down 16 points against DePaul, a game in which Trayvon Blewett was benched for being late to a team shoot-around, that was even more surprising. But the thing is, when you have a team that up until tonight had led the country in foul shooting, that's one way to keep pulling wins out of your rear ends. But the road is going to get much tougher with a road trip to Providence and then an angry Villanova team coming up as well.
An angry Villanova team, and Joby Villanova. Actually, on Saturday morning, I was on a radio show that I do locally here, and said that I wouldn't be surprised if the Villanova team went undefeated because I didn't know that there was anybody other than Xavier that could beat them this year. And promptly they lost to Butler.
To Butler. Villanova still. We'll get to it at the end of the show. I will still have Villanova where I had in the preseason. I'll leave it there. Villanova, they're going to lose. Everybody loses except if you're Kentucky from a few years ago. Everybody loses a game against a good team every now and then. It's impossible to go 40-0 pretty much. Villanova is still only going to have enough. The number of losses Villanova will still be able to fit on one hand. I am very confident by the end of the year. I
agree with that. This Xavier team, who we just got done talking about, when I watch them, I think I look at something else. I don't think despite only having the one loss, I think that they have rarely played up to their full potential. We've seen it at times. Twice they've overcome 15-point deficits or more in the second half to come back and win. They go up to Marquette and get the win. I have a feeling that this team is not at its peak yet. I don't know, call it a hunch, but I mean, if anybody, I don't think they're quite as good as Villanova, but it would not shock me at all that I think Xavier, if they can reach that peak, they have a Final Four ceiling to them.
Well,
real talkative group tonight.
Nobody's any comments.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that I don't know that the Xavier is You're right. If they could play up to another level, I'm not sure they have another level. I haven't seen it out of them. It's like you see it for a few minutes, but it just doesn't.
Right.
I don't know what the problem is there, why they can't get
I honestly think the inconsistency could cause them problems come March. They might become overseeded and run across some scrappy team that doesn't give up the 15-point lead. That's the one concern I'd have.
But knowing their luck, they'll probably run into a hot team that shoots from outside very well.
Yeah, very well could. And God forbid it's, as a 3 seed facing some 14 seed that just is ridiculous from outside, like a Wofford. We've already passed the ACC. So.
Yeah.
Well, Tytel, here's the upcoming schedule, and interesting home week actually for Providence with Marquette and Xavier, and Providence team that has not looked good all season. Is this a huge week for them to try to get their season straightened out?
I think every week in the Big East is pretty, and with all conferences, I mean, it's a big week, but I don't know that it's 10 times bigger than future weeks. I'm interested to see if Georgetown can get back on track after starting out 0-2 after their rigorous non-conference schedule. I'm planning to go see them in a couple of weeks when Villanova comes to DC, which should be a bloodbath.
Yes.
I think if we're talking about real teams with a sense of urgency, it's going to be another team with injuries, and that's St. John's. They missed Shamori Pons and Marcus Levet against Seton Hall and at home when they got shelled by Providence.
Yeah. I agree 100%, John. That's the
big week at Creighton Wednesday night here. Before a pair of very winnable home games against DePaul and Georgetown. But,
St. John's has the profile that I think was in maybe a week or two ago, and John T. I defer to more, but may have slid out right now. Now they have to fight their way back in.
Tytel, your thoughts on the Johnnies?
I have them hanging by a thread. I think that thread is going to snap, much like the health of Pons and Levet has snapped. They were so out of it in their last game. I mean, they were able to hang with Seton Hall, which this year is a good statement, but the bench scoring is non-existent because there is no bench because they all have to start. And they hit some threes, but I mean, when you take that to your best scorers, you're not going to go anywhere.
Let's move over to the Big Ten, where just tonight we saw a thrilling Michigan beat Iowa, Wisconsin beat Indiana. I don't know what ESPN is doing with making those their primary games, but for some reason they are. But David, here is the Big Ten scoreboard for the last week. As we are just getting back into conference play this week, they were still playing non-conference stuff last week.
Yes. Rutgers, who I talked about just about a week ago as not being tournament good, but being much improved. I take it all back with that last possession against Hartford and what could have been one of the worst possessions in the history of college basketball ever. Just a brilliant, oh boy, like how not to execute there. But the Big Ten, it's still obviously a multi-bid league, not as strong as we're used to seeing it. Wisconsin kind of just nowhere near. Michigan State looking like certainly a protected seed, perhaps even a 1 seed. Purdue solid. Everybody else, though, is just kind of jockeying for position. I've been impressed with Ohio State overall. I think in the end they'll actually be there. But for everyone else, it's kind of hard to say. I was really big on Minnie after they won at Providence, but after seeing more of both Minnie and Providence, that's looking just kind of like a blah win. And there isn't a whole lot else there. I really liked Penn State for a while, and then, the last couple weeks happened, and now I don't like them as much anymore. Maryland, I don't know. Do they sneak in? How many teams even get in from this league?
Statistically, I'd like to look at the RPI column. I know RPI is not all of it, but that's really a scary column if you're a Big Ten fan because 28, 16, only 3 teams in the top 50, a bunch of teams in the hundreds. That is a scary column. You don't have a ton – it looks very Pac 12-ish, to be very honest, when we pull up the Pac 12, except without the elite two, without the elite Arizona schools. This is going to be it's going to be tough to get big wins, and it's not going to be – that doesn't bode well for the Marylands of the world who need to collect a little bit more to get in.
Yeah,
so I think you do have the big two. I think that Michigan State Purdue combo up top there is the big two, and those are
You're
two
right. You're right.
But it is what you have below them. Salika, I'm looking at, hey, you're going to have Michigan State, Purdue, and teams that are going to be fighting for 10 and 11 seeds.
Yeah, and one of those teams is going to be Ohio State, who is going to be walking on eggshells when they go to Iowa. They best not be looking ahead to them with their upcoming game against Michigan State at home on Sunday. But that's just one example.
Yeah, I'm looking forward next week. We got that Purdue-Michigan game, Titel. That Michigan team's another one. They picked up a road win tonight, albeit at Iowa. But maybe that's the team that could sneak in there and be a third-best team. I
have Michigan in the field right now. A bunch of good wins against average teams in Indiana, UCLA, and Texas. VCU, another blah out-of-conference win. They definitely need to get it together because, like you said, there's a huge drop-off between the Boilers and the Spartans and everybody else after that.
I'll tell you what, sorry, David,
as wide open as this conference is, you can't underestimate the Wizard of Lincoln, Tim Miles.
What was that?
No, why am I always getting buzzed?
I think I'm going to skip ahead. We'll come back to the Big 12 in a minute here, but I want to skip ahead to the Pac 12 because Joby mentioned how similar these two conferences are to each other. And here's the Pac 12 standings. We got that same thing, Arizona and Arizona State, although looking at conference standings, Arizona State down in ninth, but that's just temporary. And not much else there either, Titel. And, the big score, obviously, was your Wildcats winning their cross-state rivalry there, though.
It was not a pleasant night only because ASU would not go away. I give them a lot of credit. I really thought that in years past, I've seen them fold in Tucson. But Trey Holder, just amazing, 31 points, made 15 of 16 from the line. And thank God that DeAndre Ayton and Alonzo Trier bailed us out with 23 points apiece. ASU fought to the very end and deservedly did not humble in the rankings. But still a great win for the Cats, and we're still undefeated in the United States. So life is good.
Right. And Stalika made this comment today in his write-up on his personal staff bracket, but I'm starting to think for sure that showing down in Atlantis was an anomaly and that Arizona's all the way back. They've beaten I don't know where A&M is in the rankings now, but I think they've beaten two top 10 teams.
11th.
That's not too shabby.
Right. And Stalika, let me go to here. The other team that had a really good week, very quietly, was this Utah team, winning both road games in the state of Oregon. Is this a team that maybe could be that third or fourth team out of the Pac-12?
That's certainly possible. One of the historical footnotes about their win at Oregon, that was actually their first win in Eugene since the early 1950s. But at the same time, Oregon, they're not what they were last year. But at the same time, road wins are going to be kind of gold. Washington got one at USC, but they were unable to get the double after falling late in the second half at UCLA.
Yeah, that was a heck of a game, that Washington-UCLA game. They were up nicely in the first half.
Yeah.
I don't think they scored a single point after halftime.
I'll tell you, Washington's win over Kansas, though, being one of the biggest wins of the year, has really helped that entire conference, because then all of a sudden UCLA's win over Washington looks okay because it combines with the USC wins, and all of a sudden there's UCLA. Then UCLA gets the win against Kentucky. The Pac-12 is the comeback conference for out of conference this year. What was looking like a two-bid league now will be where the Big Ten is. Yeah, it won't be that seven-bid league, but it will be more than just the Arizona schools, and they should be thanking UCLA winning in Rupp and Washington winning in Allen Fieldhouse, or Kansas City, to make it happen.
But if you want to talk about a result that was really nuts over the weekend, that would be a USC and Washington State, especially with USC's leading score going from flagrant 2.
This isn't funny, and it breaks every code of maleness that there is. Just a cheap shotting someone right in the nuts. But when Bill Walton's commentary on this had me on the floor. Is there any way we can pull that up? It was Not that I like seeing people get hit in the nut, but Bill Walton, well, that was just uncalled for. It was so great.
It was definitely worth going back and watching just for his commentary. Although I would actually go for listening and not for watching him
Right, yeah.
deck the opposing player. I think it's suspended for the first half of the next game.
Yeah. Should he be suspended for multiple games for that? I wouldn't be upset if he were. What an unbelievable – all humor with Bill Walton aside, what an unbelievable cheap shot. Like, men that get into, like, bloody brawls don't even go there.
Well, my understanding was that Medu was actually stripped of his captaincy at USC and also had written a letter of apology to the Washington State player.
Yeah, okay, good. You're darn right he did.
Was stripped of his captaincy, and yeah. But Tytel, here's the upcoming schedule in the Pac-12, and I had the two games I highlighted. If Utah is something, this is their week hosting the two Arizona schools.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not sold on the Utes just because if you look at their schedule, they've played 6 top 100 teams. The 3 losses have all been by double digits: UNLV, Butler, and BYU, albeit none of them at home. The 3 wins, Missouri, Mississippi, and Oregon, have all been by 9 or more. So they don't play any close games. It's always too much in either direction. So I would like to see what they do in a close game that comes down to the wire. And I'm just not convinced that they can – they might be able to steal one. I'm hoping, obviously, that they do it later in the week than earlier in the week. But I'm not a believer in this team just yet.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's go back. We skipped the Big 12. David, let's head back over there. Where as we record this, we're recording this around a little after 10 o'clock here on Tuesday evening. So there's the Texas Tech-Kansas game is going on right now with Texas Tech up 11 early in the second half. But there's the other scores from the past week. And we just saw tonight TCU with a real test from Baylor, but found a way to win it in overtime.
Yeah, big overtime win. Their first true road win of the year, I believe. That bloated record, but going out on the road for the first time and getting it. We've made this point before, but in doing the write-ups every day, you get the sense that every game has tournament implications. Every game is a resume game. And it's been a lot of fun so far, and it's just going to continue to be that way. And Texas Tech, again, you had 2 teams in Texas Tech and TCU starting off unranked, and I know you liked TCU, but no one was really big on them as being tournament teams, much less in the top half of the bracket. If Texas Tech can win at Kansas, we have to start thinking of both of them as potential protected seeds.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Again, a real talkative group
I'd
tonight.
agree with you. This Texas Tech team, Chris Beard has just done an amazing job there, and I thought they might contend for a bubble shot, but they're looking bubble team, but they're doing a lot better than that. The other team I think we got to talk about is Joby, is the team with the best player in the nation, and Sooners. It was a 1-point win, but they did knock off TCU gave TCU their first loss over the weekend.
Well, and I'll since it is I'll shoot to the ratings. Oklahoma, because of that win over TCU, shot to the number 1 spot, and the losses by Villanova and Arizona State, shot to the number 1 spot in the nitty-gritty ratings. If you look at their resume, that TCU win's just amazing because you say, well, TCU wasn't challenged. TCU has 3 wins over teams that are in the tournament right now. And Oklahoma went in and beat them. And Oklahoma's only loss is to an Arkansas team who's pretty darn good, and we'll get to the SEC in a second. But Arkansas, we'll see how – I haven't seen how the Mississippi State's game is going tonight. But Arkansas is nothing to be ashamed of. You go out, you beat TCU. You compiled on what is already a very strong, solid resume over that they've put together with Wichita State on the road, USC, an NIT caliber team on a neutral court. Oklahoma, wow. And Trae Young, you have your go-to. And the Big 12, just as we were talking about the Pac-12 and Big 10, should be scared of that RPI column. Well, look at that RPI column for the Big 12. A lot of lovely, lovely opportunities for your Texas Techs, your TCUs, your Texases of the world to get those wins. and to get out of bubble land.
Yeah, if you look at the resume and the predictive ratings, everybody is top 100 in across the board in almost everything. And I think we've asked this question a couple times before, but Titel, let me throw it out there one more time. Is this finally the year Kansas can't win it, and which is a shock to me because I thought this Kansas team was a national title contender 2 months ago.
They are a contender. I mean, especially if Washington makes a tourney, which I don't think they will, but it's not looking like a hellacious loss right now. Nor would losing tonight to a 12-1 team be that bad. But I've picked against Kansas too many times, and they always disappoint me by winning, so I will not be picking against them this year.
But I think one team that probably needs to start raising a few flags is going to be Baylor. They were blown out at Texas Tech and ended up losing the tough one at home in overtime against TCU. But at the same time, they've also – I didn't think the injury to Terry Mason would have hurt them as much, but when you consider games like these along with the Wichita State game, missed opportunities are adding up for the Bears here.
Yeah,
and Baylor –
I was going to say, Joey, I think we may have a Baylor basketball season that was a lot like their football season, where they can't win games yet they're always in them.
Yeah, Baylor. Someone has to lose games in the Big 12. There's 10 teams. Not everybody's going to win every game. Baylor's going to be on the short end, and you were highlighting, Chad, what it could really hurt Baylor down the stretch. Don't overemphasize RPI, but that 124. Even against this great competition, it's going to go up. But
it definitely
124 out of conference, that's awful at this stage. You're out of conference is done, and you are not going to get improvements with the SWAC teams that you beat up on playing other 0-14 SWAC teams. That's just going to continue to whack at your RPI.
Well, they got a great shot at winning the SWAC this season, at least.
Yeah.
But look at the upcoming schedule, David.
Yeah. Again, another great week. That's Texas Tech at Kansas going on right now. We're live on tape delay. We've got Bedlam. Love it. I don't know how exciting this edition of it is going to be. And then how about Oklahoma at West Virginia?
Yeah.
Boy, that's going to be fun. Kansas at TCU. TCU is going to be off the rails for that game. I know that they're coming off of a loss, but still, I mean, that place is going to be jacked up to the roof for that one. Texas and Baylor, that kind of heated. Both teams really needing a win there. You know what? We're going to have to start highlighting the games that don't matter. It'll take less time that way.
I think we just highlight them all. That's the type of conference we have this year here.
Yeah. And is this the kind of year just 14-4, 13-5 end you up in first place in this league? It could.
Yeah. And I think it also put a 1 next to your name on the seed line in the NCAA tournament. So
yeah.
But Titel, let me pull up the SEC here, the final conference. And again, as we're recording this, a couple SEC games going on right now, including we got Arkansas with a small lead over Mississippi State, and we got Florida up 10 on the road at Texas A&M. And that's why I wanted to start with you, with this A&M team suddenly running into trouble after they were rolling early in the season.
I said it about 2 to 3 weeks ago when they were playing against my Wildcats in Phoenix. I said, if A&M beats Arizona, then I think I'm going to put them in the Elite Eight. And they were so close, thanks to DeAndre Ayton making a stupid foul on a three-point shot, that they came up just 1 or 2 points short. So it might have been an anomaly, but the Florida thing makes it look like a trend. I think I saw a stat that they've had a total of 6 different suspensions this season already, which is all of a month and change old. And 2 of the guys have been suspended multiple times, including John's fantasy team star DJ Hogue. God help me. So, yeah, I'm not a believer in this team anymore. And they could – I mean, they have the talent. I just think that there's too many distractions and they're not trending in the right direction.
Yeah, and Joby, another team that's suddenly not trending in the right direction, Tennessee, tough, back-to-back tough losses, Arkansas and tonight against Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, and you named 2 teams who were in the tournament that they lost to. I'm not ready to give up on Tennessee yet. I'm also not ready to give up on A&M yet because, remember, the Alabama loss, they're losing. They have 2 of their top 3 scorers are out, for instance. So, I think what you're seeing is an SEC that is better than we have ever, and I say ever, including the double Final Four, ever seen, especially because of the depth. Even LSU, who we scoffed at preseason, has been competitive out of conference. And we said, there's 13 reasonable teams in LSU. Turns out Vanderbilt's that one team, who sucks. But they didn't win the night. They win the night. It's just crazy.
They were that team at this point last year.
Right.
I mean, they sprinted down the stretch.
Right now, if you look at the nitty-gritty range, I know it's early, you can't overly rely, et cetera. But look how many teams are 45, which is the magic mark, and under. That's 9 SEC teams. Oh, and there's a bunch of teams like at 70, 75, 72, which are really good, which is still very competitive. There are going to be good wins to be had throughout the year. This is just a bigger version with Vanderbilt, to excuse Vanderbilt to the side. This is just a bigger version of the Big 12. They're going to be getting good wins, and the losses that Tennessee got are not the end of the world. Now, you got to finish 500 in your conference or close to it, but you're going to have opportunities.
Now, assuming this result were to hold up tonight, it would be a nice rebound for Florida, who's had the swoon of late against Florida State, Clemson, and also Loyola Chicago. Winning at Texas A&M would certainly go a long way towards curing some of those ills.
Excellent
a lot of those ills.
Because when I say 9 teams are in the tournament right now, Florida is not one of them. And that's, against common, thought. That's what's crazy about this. We're not even including Florida. When I say a statement like that, that's how crazy this is, that how good the conference is for some reason this particular year.
Well, Stalika, here is the upcoming schedule. We see that there's 2 games that are going on right now at the top there, but we've got Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky at Tennessee coming up this week, Florida, Missouri, Mississippi State. A lot of good games on Saturday. Just highlight that entire Saturday in the SEC. And since when have we highlighted an entire day of games in the SEC? I don't remember when we last did that.
Well, there's also going to be a sense of urgency for Kentucky because they haven't really – I think their only win away from home this year is Monmouth, and that was on a neutral floor in New York. I mean, even winning at LSU would be an improvement, and winning against Tennessee, that is far from a gimme. But then again, Tennessee, as we've discussed earlier, they've already had 2 tough luck losses themselves.
Yeah, the huge schedule, though, David, coming up this week. In Georgia with a big week, 2 home games against Ole Miss and Alabama after they played Kentucky tough but couldn't pull that game out.
Right. And again, kind of a big week for them. They've had a really good year. Another team with a bloated record that's been kind of quiet. They really need this one against Ole Miss tomorrow, not so much that it helps them as much as it is that there aren't many winnable games in the conference, so you got to get the ones at home against teams that probably aren't tournament teams. But, again, and then they have Alabama coming in this weekend, so a big week for them. They need both of these at home, I think.
And then there's also one team that we haven't discussed much this year, and that's Angry Frank's bunch. Can they play spoiler at home against Missouri and at Alabama? We'll have to see.
Titel, a huge weekend for Alabama, Georgia. First of all, playing basketball Saturday, and there you go, Monday night, another game between Alabama and Georgia. You got a prediction for either one of those games?
I didn't know they were in the title game. I hadn't seen ESPN do a promo in the last 5 minutes. I'll give you a prediction for both. I think Alabama is going to win both because of in the basketball team, the star players. I love Colin Sexton, and I don't think he's going to hit the freshman wall because I think he's better, and he's got John Petty and a nice group around him. And Georgia just seems to not have it going this year besides Deontay Maton. As far as the football game, nothing would surprise me because I thought Georgia was dead late in the first half against Oklahoma and came all the way back in overtime and double overtime to win it. But it's hard to beat Nick Saban if you're anybody, much less one of his former assistants as Kirby Smart is. So roll Tide.
If I could make a prediction.
Right.
I know you're just shocked when I say, let's go football for a brief second. Georgia is just merely a less talented version of Alabama. and that's it. Yeah. That's all I'll just say.
Well,
Michelle and Chubb are awesome. Yeah.
the committee should have never taken Alabama, because why would you take them and not Auburn, much less Ohio State? And for that reason, I think Alabama wins going away.
Let's head over to the American, and tonight, Tuesday night, there were 40 games, I believe, on the schedule tonight. And in all 40 of those games, that's 80 different teams. Every single one of them had scored at least 20 points by halftime.
Just sitting
on
back and listening.
Sunday, in the American,
grab a beverage. This is Chad's been on an American rant all week. I've been looking forward to this all week long.
Carolina, 3 of those 4 teams failed to top 20 points by halftime. They've only had one team in 10 conference games so far this season involving in the American. Only one team has topped 40 points by halftime, and that was Houston in that win over South Florida. Titel, I'm just disgusted by American basketball. I didn't want to watch these games. Do you?
I don't want to see South Florida play East Carolina or anything, but I think that Stalika would agree that Cincinnati-Wichita State should be one of the games of the year, no?
Well, it should be 2 games of the year, if not 3 in the tournament. But look at what we have to go through just to get to that point.
And that's my problem, is that you've just got a bad basketball project. Look over here in the Ken Pom ratings at the tempo rating. Those are some of the slowest, most boring teams in the nation. That's what those numbers mean.
There's nothing boring about low tempo numbers. Nothing. It's just good defense.
Where's Lee Delvecchio when you need him?
I know.
I enjoy watching.
Do not pull up the ACC tempo numbers, or I will explain to you why it's good defense.
But, David, is there anything that you did see in these results from this past week here in the American that's even worth discussing?
Yeah, Tulane. I was really happy for them. They had a really, really nice road win against Temple, and they were so excited that they forgot to show up against Houston. Or not
Tulsa.
Houston, I'm sorry, Tulsa, yeah.
That's worse.
Yeah, oh boy. I do like this Houston team still. I know that I was harping on them before and you all shouted me down, and they did not get the wins that they needed, but I think they got it in them to be a force in this league, in this blistering pace of a league. Don't blink, you're going to miss something exciting. Pace of a league we have here. But I don't know, but outside of Cincinnati and Wichita, like those are definitely first ballot top half of the bracket teams, I think. SMU and Houston might be fighting out for a third spot, along with SMU and Houston.
SMU and Houston. Interesting game this week. Interesting week. Coming up here. Stalika for Cincinnati at Temple, home against SMU. To the extent anybody's a challenge besides Wichita, these may be the 2 games.
Well, number one, definitely take the under when Cincinnati and Temple play, because I'll be surprised if this game gets into the 50s. But
I'll take the under in every single American game the rest of the season.
But certainly SMU and Cincinnati. But I would also say Central Florida and Temple might be the other intriguing one, because we've been following the Knights and their push for possibly a fringe bubble team themselves.
All right. Well, I've had enough of the American, I think, for the rest of the year. I mean, we may just outlaw for the rest of our podcasts. But Joby, the Atlantic 10, despite the fact that it may only be a single bid league,
I don't think it is.
I don't either.
I like it a lot better than the American, don't you?
Well, I like the basketball probably better, but American has 3 to 4 teams. I honestly believe right now there are 2 teams in this field from the A10. And yes, the Bonnies are one of them. Please look at the Bonnies' resume. You will actually go, wow, this is a tournament team. You take off.
I've been saying that all year long.
I mean, if you
I've been big on the Bonnies. What? I have been. I mean, you can't. You gotta look past that first loss because they weren't at full strength. You got to look at what they've done since then.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, they do have a win over Syracuse team that's probably in this field right now. That I think the Bonnies are actually in the surprise category coming down. Rhode Island's not a surprise. Rhode Island, what they've done this year is kind of what we expected. They're going to be in the middle of the middle of the pack NCAA area. I defer to John T on that, but watch out if the Bonnies play like they have after game one, you're going to see two teams out of the American because there's enough
Atlantic
reasonableness to pile up the wins. They need to pile up the wins, but I think they can.
Well, how about the Dukes?
Great job throwing your voice there over to David with those comments about the Bonnies. But interesting week actually for the Bonnies, though, at Dayton and at St. Joe's.
I mean, my Penn Quakers beat Dayton, so that's going to be a lot less interesting than you think, ironically. And St. Joe's, we do love the Big Five, but I like the Bonnies on the road. Another thing to think about with Rhode Island, I do love to emphasize that injuries do impact games and seeds and getting in and other stuff. The preseason player of the year in this conference was E.C. Matthews. Rhode Island's only lost 3 all season. Alabama on the road, no E.C. Matthews. Virginia on the road, no E.C. Matthews. Neutral site. And at Nevada by 7, who's a good Nevada team who's going to make the tournament. Matthews was healthy before he went down with injury. He had 18 points in a 7-point loss. I mean, he is going to take this team to heights that Jalen Adams will take St. Bonnie's to as well. So I think Joby is spot on with a 2-bid at least league.
I think if you're looking for a team off the beaten path, Duquesne actually capitalized and beat Dayton at home. Can they beat GW at home and possibly score a road win at Fordham? Suddenly you'd be looking at Keith Dambrod in his first season in the A-10, 3-0.
3-0
yeah.
with the strength of schedule rival Georgetown's, yes.
Yeah, they are. But we're talking about a Duquesne team that is as good, is usually about as good as the teams Georgetown has been playing. So at least they're rising above that level some. If he gets Duquesne to the NIT, I think he should be coach of the millennium in this conference.
By the way,
I will agree with that.
What the hell is going on with Richmond this year? I know they beat Davidson this week, but what in the hell? I mean, come on. Because it's not like they had a tough schedule to get to that blistering 2-10 record. It's not a. I mean, the strength of schedule is just kind of it's okay. And they go 2-10. Awful. This is not what you expect out of a Richmond team. You do not.
One of us was big on Richmond coming into the year, but I don't see any reason to point out who that was. Anyway, moving on.
David, I'll let you move on. I'll let you move on to the Mountain West Conference, and. I think there's a conference all year we're going to be asking, is this a single bid league? Is this a 3-bid league? And we're still kind of seeing
2.
The same thing in that area there between Boise State and Nevada, even UNLV, who started out 0-1 in conference play with the loss to Boise.
I like both Boise and Nevada. I think they're both tournament teams, and I don't know if they'll be in the top half of the bracket, but I think they'll be both inside the bubble. I think Nevada will be in the top half of the bracket. I think there's a much better chance of it getting as many as 3 as there is it getting as few as just 1. Boise and Nevada are both good, and it wouldn't surprise me if they ran away from the conference, especially when you consider the games that they've already won. 2 of the harder games are out of the way already at Fresno State and UNLV.
Right. Well, and then you got team schizophrenia there, Joby, in San Diego State, losing to Wyoming, beating Gonzaga, losing to Cal.
San Diego State, UNLV could be team schizophrenic too, by the way. San Diego State was kind of the team I think everybody was pointing to when we talk about, is this a 3-bid league? I think San Diego State has had to take care of business against the Wyomings of the world to be in that discussion. You can't lose those games. Wyoming's not a bad team. They're a good team, but they're not an NCAA level team. You need to go and basically have a triumvirate at the top that was basically beating most of the all-comers. And San Diego State could do that still. Hey, if they were on the table and get a win against Boise and Nevada, they still can get back in the discussion because the conference has depth and not a lot of yuck beyond San Jose State. And so are they out? No, but man, they've lost their chances. And they're behind the 8 ball, and that's not the place you want to be.
Well, I'm gonna beg to differ with you on the yuck. I think Air Force is pretty much a yuck, but I think you got two of them. But I tell you, if you look at the metrics here at Boise State and Nevada, they've both got the metrics to be at-large candidates, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think more so in Nevada, but Boise certainly had a huge win over UNLV to get back up to speed. Nevada's hard to figure out. Like, they play difficult teams, as you can see by the strength of schedule, and they've won most of them. And I think that they're going to win the conference. We'll see how they do against Boise in the weeks ahead and months ahead. It's just such a weird team because Musselman he's a great coach, I think. He brings in so many transfers, and I think he does a good job of getting them on the same page. If you look at, like, next year, their starting 5 who's sitting out would probably, like, finish in the top half of the Mountain West. They have so many transfers on this team.
Well, Salika, let me go over to the last conference we're going to discuss tonight, the West Coast Conference, where we actually had a pretty interesting game this past week, which was St. Mary's on the road at BYU, pick up a much, much needed win.
Yeah, they needed that one because they're still going to have the 2 games upcoming with Gonzaga. But another team quietly we should start looking at is the San Diego team. This is a team that won at Colorado. They won at New Mexico State, incredibly enough. I mean, with their 3 losses against Santa Barbara, San Diego State, and North Texas, they're certainly not going to be at-large caliber, but could it give the Gales possibly another top 100 RPI opponent?
Okay, I thought you were going at large bid there, and I was about to rip you apart, but you backed off from that one. But yeah, it could be a top 100 type of team, David. I think the other top 100 obviously is BYU, although I don't think that's a tournament team either.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to blow through the league and do something like beat Gonzaga 2 out of 3 times or something, but I don't think they got it in them. Good, but not that good.
All right. Well, I guess on that note, I'm sorry, Joby, you had a...
Oh, no. I was going to say, I actually like BYU a lot. You're right. I don't think they're in the tournament. They have to do something special to do it. But we talked about Utah earlier. They won that Holy War game earlier this year. That's a very nice win for the conference as a whole because it gives credibility for maybe St. Mary's who, hey, if St. Mary's slips up a couple of times, they all of a sudden find themselves in danger. Wins over BYU, wins over San Diego. They look stronger and help St. Mary's case to solidify a spot in the tournament. I think Gonzaga's in.
Right, and I think
as well as they don't blow up.
I mean, unless St. Mary's wins at Gonzaga, we are probably going to be talking about that St. Mary's at BYU win being their best, at least their best road win of the season at the end of the day. And at least it's going to be something. It's going to be a top 100 road win, which will count. It's going to be a Category 1 road win. I guess on that note, though, let me go ahead and pull this down here. And I want to run through a topic that we haven't done since preseason with each of you and say, now that we are here at the beginning to get into conference season, who is your Final Four and your national championship picks right now, as opposed to where we were 2 months ago when we may have been picking teams that are kind of not doing as well as we thought they would. But Salika, why don't I start things off with you? Who are your Final Four and national champions right now?
I would probably say right now my Final Four would be Duke, Villanova, Michigan State, and Oklahoma with their late surge. But I'm going to stick with my preseason pick, and that would be Michigan State to win it all.
Michigan State winning all. Tytel, what about you? What do you think you are?
All right, so what I did for this was to try to find some common trends from last year's tournament teams, especially the Final Four, to see what it takes to make it. And I found a couple things that caught my eye. So you need a decent strength of schedule, which is why you can't just beat up on a bunch of cupcakes. You need a bunch. You don't need a bunch. You need at least 2 seniors who can score 10 points a game, which is why I'm not picking 2 of the youngest teams in the nation, Duke and Kentucky. You need a team that gets a lot of steals and plays good defense, usually keep the other team from shooting better than 40% from the field. And as you saw with guys like Roy Williams, Angry Frank, Dana Altman, and Mark Few, you need a coach who's been there several years, at least 5, which is why I'm not picking Butler because you know how I hate my rookie coaches. No offense, Laval Jordan. So I'm going off the board a bit. So I like Purdue.
Whoa.
I like the Shockers. For John S., I'm going to go Xavier. And since he talked me out of Baylor, I'm going to go with Villanova.
And Villanova. And who's your dash chip?
Did your eyes talk you out of Baylor?
Also, it's weird because I'm not seeing a Head and Shoulders national champ, and I would not be surprised if the Spartans won it, like you said. But at gunpoint, what the heck? Let's go Boiler up.
Wow, awesome.
Wow, Boilers. Wow, Joby, do you want to join him on the Boiler bandwagon?
No. I was looking over it. I'm actually keeping 3 of my 4. And the one new team that's in there, I know everybody's going to be shot. Duke instead of Kansas. That's like not crazy. But the other 3, I'm still sticking with Michigan State. Not surprised everybody has them. Villanova, everybody has. But I am still sticking, and I like the senior component, John T. That's why senior point guards mean so much to me, and Javon Carter has not disappointed. Good coaches do good things. Bob Huggins just hit that 900 mark. I like West Virginia a lot. Don't know if I'll have him as my champ. I'll stick with Villanova, but I really like this West Virginia team. They've done nothing to disappoint my preseason Final Four.
Oh, David, where are you on this?
I had Villanova as one of my Final Four. I was going to stick with them because even in the game that they lost, when down by 23, I think that they showed that they can play at a high level most of the time. They just didn't play at a high level for about a 15-minute span in that game. Otherwise, they have. I still think that they're the best team, too. They'll be my national champion. Oklahoma, I love what they're doing. I think they're going to be another one of my Final Four teams. Wichita State, they would need the right matchups, but I think that they're built to play well in tournament play and can go pretty deep. I know that they have the loss to Notre Dame earlier, and like Oklahoma absolutely blasted them, but I like them a lot. And a team that I think is going to kick it into gear largely because of the way they kicked it into gear last year, late in the year. It's not the most conventional pick, even though they're high in the rankings, but I'm going with Xavier as my other Final Four team.
Well, I actually agree with 3 of your 4, David, which I hate agreeing with you, but I do like Villanova, Oklahoma, and Wichita State all in the Final Four, and I do like Villanova to win it all. My 4th team, I'm going with Michigan State. It came down to them or Duke. I guess if I had to go one other team that I actually seriously thought about, Titel, none of you mentioned them, but your Arizona Wildcats is a team that I really thought about for this spot. I just couldn't quite do it.
Yeah, they make the Final Four every year. Great pick.
Continental States, so they have a shot. But let me run through each of you. Any other final thoughts? Titel, let me start with you.
So as the calendar turns to 2018 and we get into conference play, it's important, sorry to keep harping on it, about guys who are leaving their teams like Bonzi Colson, as well as guys who are coming back. 2 I want to focus on. Wichita State, 11-2. They just got their leading scorer back from last year, Marcus McDuffie, who had been hurt. He's off to a very slow start in limited minutes, so he's not going to make an immediate impact. Keep an eye on them in March when he's at full strength. West Virginia, 13-1 with the press and everything, and Miles and Javon Carter. They get a 6'8" forward back in Asa Ahmad a week from Saturday. He missed the entire fall semester because he was ineligible. When you have good teams who get even better as the season goes on, unlike Notre Dame, unfortunately, keep an eye on the Shockers and the Mountaineers.
I think that I agree with that completely. Joby, you next.
Well, we hit on it in our ACC portion of the program how we focused on Virginia. It's going to be a very important week coming up. It's also going to be an important week on the other end of that Virginia scale on North Carolina. North Carolina is a weird team to figure out. Plain and simple. We know about the Wofford loss, but what's being left behind is they almost lost to Wake last week. Very close game at home. I don't know if I can put a finger on this North Carolina team. And they have Barry, we know that, but the inside presence of Bradley, Meeks, Hicks, they lost all of that. And so now they've turned into this perimeter team, and that's not the sort of team Roy Williams typically has and wins with. I have a lot of questions about this North Carolina team. Right now they're riding not high, but they're in the polls, 10, 12, wherever, typically. This could be a team that at the end of the day, we look up and all of a sudden, wow, they're only a 10 seed. Watch it, because we're going to find out a lot about North Carolina, not just Virginia, but North Carolina when they come to Charlottesville this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game, actually. It should be a real interesting one, at least. Salika.
This is the 70th season since the Associated Press started doing polls throughout the season. And I have to credit ESPN Stats and Info for this. This is the first time in that era. This is the earliest we have gone without an undefeated team as of December 30. The last 3 undefeated teams were Villanova, TCU, and Arizona State. All went down. So if you're looking for the ultimate sign of parity in college hoops this year, here you go.
Yeah, and I tell you, don't want to hear it, but Arizona State was technically the last one to fall. So
I do want to hear it because we were the reason.
Well, okay, true. David, let me let you finish things off for us tonight.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of examples of top 15 teams in the same state that don't regularly play, or like tournament regulars in the same state that don't regularly play. And I can't think of any except Kansas and Wichita State. So I would like to congratulate those 2 teams for being trendsetters.
Okay. I guess on that note, I don't quite get that.
Why don't they play each other? My God, schedule each other. Anyway, so.
Well, David, when you get done with Kansas' schedule, they're not going to have enough time left for the Big 12 schedule.
It's not my problem. I'm just going to have them play Wichita State and Missouri every year. They don't need to play in the Big 12.
I guess on that note, on behalf of Joby Fortson and John Teitel up here, John Salika and David Griggs down on the bottom row, I do want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll be back again later this week, next week, and all kinds of great content on the site, including John
Back
T's
to Mondays from now on.
mid-season awards that are up there. So check a look at them, the All Conference Awards tab up top, and we'll talk to you again real